Hi, Richard Silk here with tips and advice about life and relationship as told through stories. Today I want to talk about depth of patterning that exists in all of us and becoming sensitive to it and aware of the degree to which it really can obstruct and our desires and goals in life and hold us in place, and even in negative kind of patterning. A lady client I talked to recently, she's a nurse. She's been working in hospital for some 20 years, has done well. She's got a strong background. She's got her degree received with good grades and so on. And when she describes what her accomplishments are, it's like, oh, great. Well, what's the problem? And well, the difficulty is that she really does not like what it is that she does. She'd like to move off into another related field, but she just always is hampered by the feeling that she's not good enough, she's not smart enough, she's not going to be able to pass the tests that come up to her, and so on. So I talked to her about her years as a kid growing up in school and so on in particular. And she got a very, very strong and negative message, both from her mother and her father, that she was not smart enough, that the grades that she got were not good enough, that there was a problem, that she couldn't learn a foreign language, and so on. And so that kind of pattern that she described now is reflective of what it was that happened with her when she was in junior high school and high school. And so, we talked about that a bit, and she said, well, I've seen other people before. She told me she'd seen a couple of therapists, and she was still, had this baggage. She was still greatly hampered by the same problem. I said, think about it for a minute, and your parents who gave you this message when you were at that age, I would only assume that they were doing something very similar back when you were very, very young. Right from the start, even as an infant, crawling around, the kind of the communication they gave to you later is something they were giving to you about being able to reach for that, being able to do that, being able to move and grow out in the world as a very young child does. And so when we had this conversation, and I said, hey, this is what you learned, this is what you were taught, this is what, the way you got patterned from the outside, an exterior force that was obviously superior and to who you looked up to, both your mother and your father. And when we had this conversation, it made a huge difference for her, because she had been thinking previous to this, it was kind of like, well, it's her fault. When she was in high school and junior high school, she could have chose to do something different. But in those years, she wasn't even so aware as she became later as an adult, and she had seen a therapist and so on. But now, feeling that, oh, this is something that really is operating in me and her at a subconscious and an unconscious level. It's a depth of patterning that's there from a very young age and just gets repeated, and it's just done as an automaticity. So it was tremendously relieving for her, tremendously opening, and she felt like, oh, I can move forward. Well, she still needs, of course, to develop more self-discipline, and more self-confidence, which can be done in a much simpler way rather than the kind of probing, therapeutic kind of way that she had been looking for up to this point. So we'd set some goals, and we have some guidelines, and she's going to get some other kind of help to be able to accomplish her goals, get feedback from other people, and not just operate on her own negative self-sense. Well, one quick postscript to this is that this is about her work. But when you think of it, these kind of patterns that get instilled in us at a very, very young age, before we even know what's going on, can also be in all other aspects of life. Food, diet, across the board, relationships, relating to men, relating to women, socializing, and so forth. So it's a wonderful kind of tool to be sensitive to and to be able to use and to examine. So that's a quick view, and I hope this was useful for you.